you fellow crocheters. In this video we're going to cover the basics of crocheting in the round, which means we will be learning the magic circle, sometimes referred to as the magic ring, how to increase stitches, how to decrease stitches, and finishing off. But as a bonus, this tutorial will teach you how to complete a whole project, which is this, a simple cat toy. Yeah! So you're going to need a few things before we get started. For the basic tutorial, you'll need some worsted weight yarn or number 4 yarn. Today I'm using Lily Sugar and Cream Cotton for our cat toy project, but you can use any other worsted weight yarn if you're not going to do that. We'll also need a 5mm hook, also referred to as an H hook. You also need some scissors, a stitch marker or contrasting piece of yarn, a blunt needle, and finally, if you'd like to complete this cat toy project, a clean sock. Preferably an old sock from the bottom of your drawer that you've been meaning to get rid of but can't seem to part with. Cut it in half, lengthwise, and then into narrow strips. Just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We will also be using our previous skills in both of my chaining and single crochet tutorials. So if you haven't checked those out yet, please take a look and come back when you're ready. Now, we've got our yarn, our hook, and our other supplies, so let's jump right in. The magic circle, or ring, is a great way to begin any project made in rounds instead of rows. This can include amigurumi, hats, all sorts of toys, containers, granny squares, socks. It's almost endless. For this tutorial, we'll stick with the term magic circle. You'll begin by taking your yarn in your right hand and holding it between your thumb and forefinger like this. Then you wrap it counterclockwise around 2 fingers. 1 or 2 or more is fine, and you will cross your yarn over towards the back of your loop you've just made, but be sure not to do this too tightly. Pinch the yarn where it crosses over, and there you go, we've started our magic circle. Pick up your hook and slide it through the circle you've made and grab that yarn that's behind it. Carefully pull it through to pull up a loop. Be sure you're pulling the end of the yarn that's leading to your skein and not the tail. You can start a magic circle with just about any kind of stitch. The amount of chains you will need to start your circle depends on the size of the stitch, but we're only using single crochet here, so let's just chain 1. Alright, let's see the process one more time. Pinch the yarn between your fingers, pull around counterclockwise and cross. Pinch. Hook into your circle, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, and chain 1. Now, it's best to slide your fingers out while continuing to pinch the yarn. We've chained 1, so now we're going to put the hook back into the circle, yarn over, and pull another loop through. Then, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Look at that! We've done our first single crochet in our magic circle. I'll do a second so we can see that again. Hook through the circle, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops. I like to move my fingers closer to the work and pinch like this, because it helps keep that tail from moving back through in the circle. Hooray! We have 2 stitches on our hook, and since I'm just going over the basics, we're going to keep things to the minimum. So we'll just do 4 more stitches for a total of 6 single crochet stitches in our first round of the circle. Now we have 6 stitches on the hook for the first round. Our tail hasn't moved, so we're going to make this circle do something magical. Hold your work like this and pull your tail away from it. Your circle will begin to close. If it fights you, you can give it a little yank to make it tighter, or not. I like most of my magic circles pretty tight, especially in a lot of amigurumi or stuffed toy projects. Alright, now look at that. We have 6 single crochet stitches in the round for our first round. This side that's facing you, that's our right side. So let's move that tail towards the back of the work. Here's where things might get a little complicated, so I'll try to go step by step. First, we'll close the circle in 2 ways. You can close it with a slip stitch by inserting your hook into the first single crochet made, Take your time because it might be a little difficult to find that first stitch with smaller projects. You may need to use your fingernail to help you through this. Here it is. So I'll put our hook in there, yarn over, pull up a loop through the stitch, and then through the loop on your hook. This closes the circle and you can get ready for the next round by chaining 1, or however many chains a pattern calls for. Since we're just doing things in the round, we will not continue the project in this way. Instead, while this may look a little complicated, we're going to continue to use a single crochet while simultaneously doing 2 things. Marking your first stitch in the round using contrasting yarn as a stitch marker, and pre-tucking the tail of your magic circle. To mark your first stitch in the round, using a contrasting yarn or some other string if you don't have a stitch marker, you're going to place the length of yarn across the loop on our hook, like this. You can pinch the yarn on the sides of your hook to hold it in place as you hook through your first single crochet stitch of the previous round. Grab and pull up a loop, making sure your tail is behind the work, yarn over, and pull through both loops. There you go. The first stitch in our second round is made. If holding the yarn as a stitch marker is too difficult, after you've made your first stitch, you can do this and use your hook to pull it through. Alright, let's reset for this other part, but for now I won't be involving the contrasting yarn. Now this is about tucking your tail. So, while we're keeping the tail behind the work, what you'll want to do is when you put your hook through the stitch, take your tail and drape it over the hook. Yarn over, and as you pull that loop through the stitch, pinch your tail against the work to hold it in place, making sure you're not pulling your tail through as well. With 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. Alright, let's see that again. Hook through the stitch, lay your tail over the hook, yarn over, and pinch, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now, I'm just going to use my stitch marker for the first stitch in round 2, and we'll move forward from here. But before we do, for the rest of this project, I'll be keeping my tension tighter than usual. But the project will still look a little loose. That's okay. But if you want a snug final product, you're going to switch to a 3.5mm hook or an E4. Okay, so increasing rounds can get a bit complicated because it requires some math. I hate math. To evenly increase rounds to make a nice bowl shape, we're going to do these steps. 1. Double the number of stitches we did in our first round, from 6 to 12. 2. Increase every round by the number of stitches we did in our first round. So, how do we do that? Let's go round by round. So for round 2, we're going to double the number of stitches we have from the first round, which means we will do 2 single crochet stitches in each of the 6 stitches. We are also going to continue pre-tucking our tail for the next few stitches, so watch closely. In the same stitch we made for our first stitch in round 2, insert your hook, making sure the tail is laying over the top of your hook. Pull up a loop, careful not to pull the tail in, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Let's see 2 stitches in the next stitch while still tucking our tail. Through the stitch, tail on top, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Through the stitch, tail on top, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Ta-da! We now have 4 stitches in our second round, and as we continue making the rest, we're going to drop our tail from the equation. Awesome! Now we have 12 stitches in the round, and we've returned the first stitch. Because I hate having the tail flap around, I would usually close a circle and sew in the tail so it's no longer in my way, but we'll do that later. Moving on to round 3, we'll take out our stitch marker and do the first stitch. But first, how will we increase this round? Like I said before, we'll increase this round of 12 stitches by the number of stitches we did in our first round. So 12 plus 6 equals 18. So our first stitch we'll increase with our 2 single crochet stitches. Don't forget to place your marker in that first stitch made. And then we'll do just 1 single crochet in the next. You'll repeat this for the rest of the round. An increase stitch and then 1 single stitch in the next. I've reached the last 2 stitches on my round. If you have only 1 stitch left in your last group of an increase, go back to the beginning of your round and carefully look at your increases and the stitches that follow. We have all the right stitches here, so let's finish this round. For the next round, you'll continue the pattern of increasing 1 stitch and then doing 1 stitch in the next of your previous increase and then 1 single stitch until you reach the first stitch of your next increase group. So for the next round, it means we'll be doing an increase and then 1, 2 single crochets. Then you repeat. At the end of this round, you will have 24 total stitches. Let's do the first few together. We'll do our first single crochet, replace the marker. We'll do a second to increase, and then 2 single crochets following. 1, 2, and then we're going to repeat. Do this until you've reached the end of the round. Do you think you can do it? I know you can definitely do it. We've ended our 3rd round, which leaves us with this big circle. If you want to practice further, you can continue the formula of increasing in the first stitch of your previous rounds, and then once in the rest of the stitches until you reach your next group of increase stitches. This is for only basic and even increasing. If you have a pattern increasing differently, just make sure you're always counting your stitches as you go along, and don't be afraid to go back or start over. It doesn't mean you failed, you're just practicing. To make our current project a little more shapely, we're going to stop increasing and do 3 rounds of single crochet. This means you'll only be crocheting once in each stitch around and go 3 times. And make sure to always use your stitch marker. All right? Awesome. Now stop everything. You can either pull a long loop up from your hook or place a stitch marker through the loop and tighten it down. Now we're going to grab our needle and tuck the rest of this tail from the beginning of our magic circle. So, I've got this nice large blunt needle. You can find these easily at any craft store or online. And I'm going to turn my work inside out a little bit and then thread my tail through here. Weaving in ends is sometimes very personal and everyone has their own style. I like to get it tight by going in these stitches like this and then doing a simple slip knot and then back through the stitches. Pull on the tail a little. Cut, but not too close. And then pull the work a bit and flatten. Voila! Now that we've taken care of that, let's put our work back to normal and move on to the decrease. The method for decreasing rounds is exactly the opposite of the increase when working on evenly made projects. Our last increasing round had a method of increase followed by 2 regular stitches. So, to decrease, we will decrease and then follow up with 2 regular stitches. But that's not all. There's a few ways to decrease, so I'll go over 2 of them. The first is a normal decrease. So, to do this, we put our hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then you put your hook with 2 loops still on it into the next stitch and repeat. Yarn over, pull through, now you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, then pull through all 3. The second method is known as an invisible decrease. This follows the same rules as before, except you're going to push your hook from the front of the stitch and up into the middle. So straight through the little stitch's heart, yarn over and pull through, and then repeat in the next stitch. Into the middle of the stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. There you have it, an invisible decrease. Some patterns call for it, some don't, but for the sake of beginning crochet, we'll just stick to this first way. So, we decreased our first 2 stitches, and then we'll follow the same path of our increases and do 2 more single crochet stitches. Then we decrease again, 1, 2, decrease, and do 2 normal stitches, 1, 2. Ta-da! The next round you'll decrease 2 stitches and then do 1 stitch, repeating that all the way around. So, I think you can do it. Let's get to it. Now, we have 12 stitches left, and if you're doing the cat toy project, now is a great time to grab those sock scraps and put most of them in there. Just stuff. All right, that'll do it. Now we're going to decrease around. That's decreasing 2 stitches every time like this. Into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 3 loops. And then just repeat that until you get to the end. Woohoo! We're almost done! Stuff the last few sock scraps in. If you don't have enough to make it kind of full, that's okay. Or you can find another bottom of the drawer sock to sacrifice in the name of our feline friends. You can also remove the stitch marker now. We don't need it anymore. Alright, with our project stuffed, we can continue to decrease these last few stitches to close up the project. Patterns may call for a specific way to finish off a project, but when I get down to this size, I really just eyeball it. So, I'll decrease the first 2. Put my hook in through the top of the work, down from the back of the stitch on the opposite side of the round. Yarn over, pull up a loop, pull that loop through the one that's on my hook, and then cut my yarn so I have a nice long tail to work with. Then, with that one loop still on my hook, yarn over and pull the yarn all the way through the loop. Pull it tight, and there you have it. Now, let's get a closer look to weave in the end. This project doesn't have to look pretty, but it should be secure so it doesn't pop open and spill all your sock guts everywhere. Alright, so when weaving in ends, you want to get your needle between the stitches you've made. This means you're sliding through that space where a completed stitch comes up around the former stitch. It takes some practice, so projects like this are a great start. I like to put it through a few times. Then, do another knot like this. Then you find some stitches to go through, and then go back through those stitches by coming around and back in like this. Pull, cut your yarn with a tad left out, then readjust the work, and we're done. Look at this awesome little lump! It's a toy straight away, without anything extra, with some cost-effective and upcycled materials. Put it into a baggie with some catnip for an extra level of fun for your feline friends. Alright, let's test it out! Thank you everyone for watching my tutorial today. Now, go take your yarn, your hook, and go crochet with confidence. Bye!